over 100 protesters from the animal activism group Direct Action Everywhere gathered outside the Foster Farms headquarters in Livingston, demanding, quote, no more factory farms.
Hello, welcome to back to my channel. The van is a mess. I'm really happy. I'm so excited because we are at the Animal Liberation Conference. Today is the very first day. It's just a little pop-up. Last time I went to this conference, I went to a smaller convergence and it literally changed my life. The week is gonna be filled with marches and lectures and all of that stuff. We still have the same messy setup with no AC outlets working because my inverter broke, and we also don't have the induction cooktops. So it's kind of a mess with that, but it's okay because we're here, we're queer, and we're fighting for the animals, baby. Yeah. We are a nation of animal lovers. As children, most of us are taught to be kind to animals and that causing suffering to animals is wrong. Most children books are filled with stories about animals, of hungry caterpillars, black bears, pigs, monkeys, and animals that kiss goodnight. But there is another story we have been taught from childhood. We are taught that it is normal to eat the bodies of certain species. We believe in a narrative where animals are humanely slaughtered, where their suffering is minimized or even eliminated. We call these animals livestock as if they're faceless units of production, commodities that we buy at the grocery store. But we have been taught a gross paradox. We have been taught to love animals and yet excuse their suffering when we cut into their flesh at a dinner table. We have been taught that killing is wrong, yet we have normalized paying large corporations to do that killing for us. We have been taught a lie. This lie has been further uncovered by the documentary Dominion, and if you haven't watched the documentary, I highly recommend it. I will leave it in the description box below, but here's a quote I really love from it. In our entire recorded history, 619 million humans have been killed by war. We kill the same number of animals every 3 days, but before we kill them, we have to breed them, confine and exploit them. Their entire lives, from birth to death, are controlled by industries who only care for profit, an empire of suffering and blood, paid for by consumers who are told that their treatment was ethical, free range, local, organic, that their deaths were humane. But the truth is, there is no humane way to kill someone who wants to live.
Comfortable in all my time. There's no space for me.
Going into a farm and pressing record on a camera has resulted in 7 indictable offenses, which is the highest criminal level in Canada. So that's on par with murder and terrorism. Each of those 7 charges holds the potential of up to 7 years in prison. And currently the courts are pushing for significant jail time.
These places are so horribly violent. Like I really feel like I can confidently say that Livingston, the Foster Farms slaughterhouse in Livingston, is the most violent place in California. I don't know where else millions of lives are taken every day, every week. And the government just gave it $3 million to expand.
Slaughterhouses! Slaughterhouses! Torture, death, and exploitation! Torture, death, and exploitation!
Yesterday, I marched around the city of San Francisco with an organization called Direct Action Everywhere. I've protested with them before, and I really love what they're doing in California. During the protests, we marched around the city. We sang, we chanted, we held signs advocating for California to put a moratorium on factory farming. And the feeling was electric. San Francisco has really been the forefront of change in the past. It has been an important city for the gay rights movement, women's rights movement, racial justice, climate justice, and the animal rights movement. In fact, it was the first U.S. state to ban the sale of animal fur products.
We stand on the sidelines and we do exactly what these corporations want us to do. We make excuses for our inaction. We are too busy, too tired, too scared.
Meanwhile, they writhe in pain, gasp for air, and finally grow still in death. And they will never care why we couldn't be there.
They're not giving us any sort of peace bonds or any sort of deals. They're just pushing for jail. Myself and 3 others were now known as the Excelsior 4. We face trial starting in March. At that point, it'll be a 3-year journey of going to court. And that process has been really interesting. It's taxing emotionally, socially, financially. Socially, it's been really interesting seeing how society and my friends and family and people around me view my actions and view me now as going through the court system and being arrested as I'm doing something bad. That's something that bad people do, and that's what criminals do. Whereas, of course, I view this as vital for non-human animals.
For the following days after the march, we attended a series of lectures. We learned stuff like the importance of nonviolence activism and how nonviolence and compassion needs to come from our core. We need to embody it. It needs to be who we are. After all, compassion and nonviolence is the root of veganism and animal liberation. So there was a big emphasis on how this value of compassion and nonviolence needs to extend into our activism. We heard from guest speakers like Chelsea Manning, who's a whistleblower who received classified information about US war crimes. She served 7 years in prison. We learned about the interconnection between animal liberation and other social justice movements.
We are all connected through our struggles for a better existence, for a better life. We're all connected. And the more that we see that we as human animals are connected to other animals, the better life will be for all of us. It's also important to note that some of the most beautiful and life-sustaining work comes from the love that we have of the fights that we're in. Because this is a struggle. This is a struggle, and it shouldn't have to be. It shouldn't have to be. Freedom is freedom, whether it's for an animal or a person. Freedom is freedom, and we need to be able to strive and fight for that.
We heard from felony defendants and law professors about the impact legal cases have in the animal rights movement and how they could bring down big ag. One of my favorite speakers of the week was a man named Evan Wolfson, who played a big role in the gay rights movement and the legalization of gay marriage. He explained there was resistance to gay marriage, even within the LGBTQ+ community. There are a few key things I learned from his speech and from his experience trying to legalize gay marriage. The first is that you don't need every person on board, you just need enough people. The second thing I learned is that the first thing to do is to put forth a vision. In this case, our vision was to put a moratorium on factory farms in the state of California. Third thing is that people will say it's impossible until it's done, and then everyone will say that they knew it was gonna happen and that they always supported it. 4, the most important thing to do is solidify your base and advocate to people in the middle ground. 5, do not tailor the bulk of your activity to the opposition. And 6, advocate to the reachable but not yet reached.
And as an Asian person who's been drinking soy milk my entire life, I have to say soy milk was milk long before milk was even.
The important thing to remember is not only do we have to have a strategy to overcome those obstacles, we need to have a vision that inspires people to take part in that strategy. And this is an image of my co-defendant, Paul Picklesheimer, moments after we took Julie out of the cage. And it is amazing. It is amazing how much these animals who are terrorized and brutalized and oppressed and psychologically tormented their entire lives change when they feel safety and love for the first time in their lives. This is a vision of a world where every single laboratory and slaughterhouse has been changed and transformed into a shelter or a sanctuary, where every single one of these poor beagles is given the love and the family they deserve, where we have transformed the way we relate to all the living creatures of this earth, and we respect them as the sentient beings they are.
A couple days later, I joined activists around the world to shut down the largest poultry farm in California. 11 activists were willingly arrested while blocking the entrance of the slaughterhouse, and 14 chickens were successfully rescued from slaughter.
They got on top of the U-Haul, they chained themselves up there somehow, and then we also had a large group of them that had concrete barrels that they had put in their arms through, and they chained themselves together.
Activists obtained undercover footage from the farm, which was released to the public. The footage documented workers failing to properly inspect birds, slamming live chickens onto the ground, and failing to stun birds before slitting their throats. The action was covered by dozens of news channels, including ABC, Fox, and The Intercept. Factory farming is one of the leading causes of climate change and is responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than the combined exhaust from all transportation. It is the industry that uses the most amount of water and is responsible for 80 to 90% of US water consumption. Factory farms have been hot spots for COVID, and scientists have already found diseases with pandemic potential brewing in factory farms. Factory farming is also a human rights issue, since slaughterhouse workers face higher rates of PTSD, alcoholism, and anxiety. Factory farming breeds, enslaves, mutilates, and kills 77 billion land animals each year.
Officials say 11 were arrested for trespassing onto private property and resisting arrest, a risk the group felt was necessary.
This fight ahead will not be easy.
Organizers say the demonstration drew activists from as far as South Korea and Mexico City.
We're here today to call on Governor Newsom and other California leaders to pass a moratorium on the expansion of factory farms and slaughterhouses.
Birds that are killed on the slaughter line every minute. 244 lives because of coordination of a powerful entity and a government that backs them, looks the other way, and takes suggestion from their coordination.
The group alleges inhumane slaughter practices are happening inside the Livingston plant. We reached out to Foster Farms regarding the protest, and they responded saying the activists were blocking private property and creating a safety hazard, but declined to comment further on the protest or allegations.
You pinch your skin, try it right now. Hopefully, if you're healthy, the skin snaps back. But if you're severely malnourished or dehydrated, it'll just stay there because you have so little fluid in your body. When you pinch your skin, it just sticks. Right? That's the way May was. She was so weak, she couldn't even lift up her head. And this is moments after Ronnie and I picked it up. You can see the condition she was in.
Yesterday, I was inside of that slaughterhouse. The amount of death that you smell, and I'm sure all of you folks can smell, being up close to it, so visceral and so real, seeing the helplessness in everybody's eyes.
This was just a stop along the way during the multi-day protest. Activists here today tell us they will continue their work tomorrow.
You know, going into a farm, for instance, this pig farm that I'm being charged with, going into a place like that, I'm not sure if many of you here have gone into a place like that or not, but I always say that it's nothing compared to watching the footage.
The place that we went to 2 days ago, Foster Farm Slaughterhouse in Livingston, they kill up to 500,000 chickens every single day. The line runs so fast, workers have to hang chickens at 23.3 per minute on the slaughter line in order to, I guess, make their wage. They get a bonus if they last for more than 30 days because they know that it's such terrible work that they have to basically bribe people to make it through a month.
The only reason she was alive when we found her was because week after week, despite having serious head trauma, despite being so weak that her skin was parched, that her legs were not strong enough to allow her to stand, she kept pecking at the food around her that fell from the perches above her. She was even eating feces and urine to get the hydration she needed to survive.
You can watch Earthlings and Dominion and any sort of YouTube video, but it is nothing compared to actually being there. It's not just the sounds and the smells. I think our emotions are contagious. As humans, I think what we're feeling, other people can feel that, and I think that's the same with non-human animals. And when you go into these places, you can sense their terror and their desperation and their agony, and I carry that. I had to walk out of that place and leave them all behind, and I carry that guilt. And it's hard that even though I did everything I possibly could, it still wasn't enough for them. I just hope that, the struggles that we go through with trials and getting arrested and facing all these fines, I just really hope that it'll be worth it.
We saved 2 chickens yesterday because they were on a 10-minute break after 4 hours of standing, killing beings. That's what you get. You kill thousands and thousands of beings. Is that okay, Governor Newsom? Is that okay to do to Californians? Is that okay to do to human beings?
At that facility, hundreds of workers contracted COVID. I think 8 died, maybe 21 across the entire company. The company refused to disclose this information or didn't do enough to protect workers, so they got fined by OSHA, one of the largest fines that any place received during the pandemic.
And again, you might think this is foolhardy. You are a hen in a factory farm. There are literally billions of chickens just like you. They're gonna die in moments anyways, just give up and die. But she still kept fighting. She had a challenge. She was a hen in a factory farm. She was malnourished. There was no hope for her. But she kept fighting in the hope that something would change in her condition, that someone would come and help her. And of course, she was literally the 1 in a million who was able to be saved. So this is a story that not only shook people in the animal rights movement we openly rescued, it shook people in the New York Times. We shared her story with reporters in the New York Times. We shared her story with journalists all over the world, and literally millions of people, because there were at least a few dozen journalists who ended up writing about this story.
I looked into the eyes of not just chickens, I looked into the eyes of some workers, of some of the slaughterhouse workers, and I saw sorrow and pain. They didn't want to be there. They didn't want to smell what they had to smell. They didn't want to smell the blood. They didn't want to be surrounded by death. They're just trying to make a living.
They're the #1 water user in the entire county. They use 4 million gallons of water every single day, while people who live in the area literally do not have enough water to drink. And I don't understand the logic behind politicians who say they care about workers. They even say they care about animals. They care about the planet. And they're giving $3.2 million to this slaughterhouse to expand. And they're doing so in the name of jobs. But then when we ask them, we should not expand these places, they say, well, what about the jobs? It's like, you literally are funding this place to give jobs. You could just use that money to give jobs in places that aren't going to give workers PTSD, that aren't going to increase rates of substance abuse and domestic violence because of the trauma that workers have to experience. Like I said before, it feels like I'm kind of losing my mind when I have to explain this, because to me, it is so obvious and it is so frustrating to have to be protesting for this. Because what I'd love to be protesting for is an animal bill of rights. And yet we're so far from that that the bare minimum we're asking for is don't make a new one. Don't allow these places to expand. Don't fund these industries. And so in this building right here, if folks don't know, we have Assemblymember Bucky Wicks' office, we have Senator Nancy Skinner, and we have new Assemblymember Mia Bonte's offices, amongst other offices. All of these legislators have the ability to enact a moratorium. They could do this tomorrow. They could introduce it, they could put it on the legislature for 2022 and make everyone have to vote on it. And I'm really excited that in exactly 1 week, I'm going to be meeting with Assemblymember Mia Bonte in this office to talk to her about this. And I'm really hoping that Nancy Skinner and Buffy Wicks will follow up with us too, and meet with us too. And so we can talk to you about this in person. We can show you the footage. We can show you the articles. We can talk to you about the horrifying impacts of animal agriculture in the state.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video with an open mind and open heart. I just appreciate all of you guys so much, and I know not everyone watching is already vegan or already an activist. If anybody wants to ask any questions or start a dialogue down below, I am so open to that as well. And if you're interested in supporting this movement, I will link down below in my description the organization that I was doing this activism with, called Direct Action Everywhere, if you would like to donate to them. There's also a petition for no more factory farms, or putting a moratorium on factory farms if you're interested in signing that. And if you're interested in donating to my activism in particular, I have a Patreon where I provide exclusive content, and I'll also just leave another area you could donate to me and donate to my travels, my activism, and my video production if that's something that interests you. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please like, because it really supports my channel, and subscribe because I post videos every 3 days on Wednesdays and Sundays. So I'll see you guys in 3 days. Bye!